Okay, so today just happens to be the Lunar Observance Day, along with the regular Sunday gathering. So it's opportunity for people who are interested to take on or reflect on the refuges and the precepts. These are things that lay the foundation for Buddhist practice and give a solid basis for our just living life in general, but certainly for trying to bring the mind to a place of peace and stillness when we have a clear sense of refuge, what we take to rely on, depend on as a framework for our perspectives and something to have faith in, then Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha are very suitable basis, foundation. And of course, the reality is we're believing in something all the time, so we may as well believe in something decent. So it's just it's kind of a no-brainer, but it's amazing how our brains, how do you say, get sidestepped or forgotten about, or so that just having that perspective where we have a structure for our perspectives and our belief systems, and having a basis in training precepts, training guidelines, which is and certainly for living life in general, then 5 precepts are a really solid foundation. But then from time to time, on an occasion like a Lunar Observance Day, then to make them conscious, but then also to reflect on the 8 precepts is what we just took, and it adds an extra layer of simplicity and renunciation, which is in terms of trying to make the mind peaceful, relinquishment and a renunciation, nekamma, is a way of creating more simplicity for the mind. As we develop our meditation practice and our practice in the Buddha's way, there's fundamental teachings that are helpful to keep bringing our mind back to be considering and reflecting on and trying to deepen our understanding and appreciation of of course, one of the fundamental teachings is the teaching that the Buddha gives on impermanence or anicca, And of course, this is a teaching that Ajahn Chah returned to over and over and over again in so many ways, so many perspectives on how to keep bringing the mind back to that contemplation of impermanence. Or say anicca has more of a much deeper and broader perspective, meaning than just impermanence. Because when we think of impermanence and we think of something, say it's changing quality, and of course that's true, but it's changing. There's also the aspect of which is the aspect of uncertainty, and this is also how Ajahn Chah used to express it over and over again, because there is of course there is a very real sense of how we perceive the changing nature of experience and phenomena. But then there's also the uncertain nature of things, the unsure, uncertain nature of things that's helpful to pay attention to, because, say, something might not change, and then you're surprised at that. And, oh, well, it was unsure. And of course, when things do change, then we say, oh yeah, it really was already uncertain and unsure. And and sometimes you count on things to not change even when you know that it really is uncertain, and we just got caught by that with the having the contractors come in and try to begin the road work, and because we're looking at the timing and the dates and the work that's still needs to be done, trying to get everything finished before the opening ceremonies in June, and it'd be nice to have things finished before opening. We can always sort of have the opening ceremony and say, yeah, well, it's uncertain whether it'll be ready to open or not. But it's nice to have it finished. People come and it's done and get to see the finished product. Then so we're sort of looking at dates and sort of say, okay, that's a crunch, and then so we say, wow, we'll have to get them to start working on that road, and Kirk said, well, I don't know, there might still be some rain. I said, yeah, it's usually not so bad in April. and of course we got 7 inches in just over 24 hours. So right where we made that cut, then the side of the hill sort of came down. And so, we'll have to deal with that too. But you take your chances with uncertainty. We took our chances, and we lost out on that one. But sort of, okay, it's not. There's no reason to be surprised by that, because it already was uncertain. It already was an unsure thing. And that's the way it works. Having to take into account the uncertain nature of things. And so in reflecting on that and taking those aspects, physically one knows that things are impermanent, are uncertain. But it's say mentally, emotionally, it's even tends to be even more apparent. It's like the Buddha is very explicit in saying, like you would be better off assuming the body to be self, to be this is who I am, what I am, this is solid, this is stable, because it lasts for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, 60, 70 years sometimes. And he said, because the mind is just constantly changing. So that even though, and then even with the actual body that we identify with as our say, this is who I am, it's constantly changing, even while it's say it's growing up and maturing, and then aging and going on its way to death. So it's constantly changing, even during that time. And in some ways that's say a burden, in that when it's changing, you have to always cut your fingernails, you have to we have to shave our hair, shave our heads. It's always growing, you have to do something with it. It's changing all the time. So there's a burden there. Then also, sometimes it's really helpful. Like, what would it be like if you ate and then your food didn't digest? You'd really be in trouble if it didn't change. So there's these, we're sort of looking at it in terms of, these things work in our favor sometimes, and sometimes they don't. But it is impermanent, changing, uncertain, unsure. So then, to be able to be contemplating this and recognizing this impermanent nature, and particularly, that recognizing the external world in its changing nature, but then really paying attention to the internal world of our body and mind. Seeing because when we see the impermanent and changing, uncertain nature of this body and mind, then we tend to be willing to not grasp or hold tightly or develop these intractable attachments that create suffering for ourselves when something changes in the way that we're not ready for, and oftentimes we're just really not ready for the change that we have not that much control over anyway. So that contemplating, investigating, accepting these aspects of of change and uncertainty are such an important piece of the investigation of Dhamma and taking Dhamma as a refuge. And it's not that it's sort of say like an uncomfortable truth, even though there is a certain amount of habitually or innately there's a certain resistance, but it's when we're willing to actually contemplate, oh, this is the nature of this is the true nature of things, then that opens the doorway into peace, into clarity. So it's like one of the at funerals in Thailand. There's a verse that is always chanted, and it's a verse from the Dhammapada, and also from the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, of anicca vata sankhara upadavaya dhammiko upajitva niruchanti te sang upasamo sukho. So it's say impermanent are all conditioned things of the nature to arise and cease. So that's their very nature, and it's in the realizing of that truth, that the release from that is possible. Its cessation is happiness, is peaceful, blissful. So it's our doorway into well-being and peace. And oftentimes, of course, we go through that doorway kicking and screaming. It's sort of, I don't want it to be this way, but that's the way, and sort of, well, that's the way it is. and being able to keep reflecting on it, internalizing it, and not just as an objective phenomena outside, but then internalizing it and feeling, what does it feel like? Because I think that's where Ajahn Chah's perspective or language that he uses on that is a way of helping to bring that in. And how do we feel about that change? And we'll feel it's unsure, it's uncertain. And of course, nobody likes uncertainty. Nobody likes things to be unsure. I want it sure. I want it clear. I want a clear agenda. I want to know exactly. I'd really like to know when these monks that we've invited are coming. We've been waiting for ages to find out for this ceremony that we're going to be having, and got basically almost no information. I said, I really want to know, but it's unsure. And learning how to be with that, and being willing to be with that, because say phenomena, being within this world. That's another aspect of anicca, is this sense of we're not really in control, and we can't really be in control. So that uncertainty and things are not sure have to form a piece of the puzzle of how we deal with it, how we live with that. in the same way that we can't really be in control of totally and completely, fully in control of our bodies or even our minds. If I was really in control of my body, I wouldn't have to go next month for cataract surgery. I would never wear out. My body would never wear out. This isn't how it works. It's just, or Ajahn Chah, I remember him, not so much as the because say like the truths, these universal truths of anicca, dukkha, anatta are kind of so intertwined that they're aspects of the same truth. So the impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. Something that is impermanent and changing and unsure. How can one take that? Oh, this is me. This is what I am. This is mine. It's impossible to formulate that. But I remember one time with Ajahn Chah, when he was a very he just had a excuse me. He just had an operation on his brain. He had a little pump put into his inside his skull because of the fluid on the brain was creating so much pressure. It was very, very uncomfortable for him and throwing everything out of whack. And after that, I was one day when he was recuperating from the operation, I was walking with him and holding him, making sure that he was comfortable. We were coming down a stair and a landing, a few stairs and landing, and just doing a few stairs and stopping at the landing and resting. And I remember him saying, he said, people, usually you might get an insight into the not-self nature of the body. So not many people get a real insight in the non-self nature of the mind itself. It's really interesting. Because that sense of, and of course it is the body is just as changeable as the mind, but because of the material, it's a material phenomenon. It seems more tangible, and is more tangible, so we see it a bit more clearly. Our thoughts, our moods are less tangible. But we tend to believe in them more solidly, even though they're even more impermanent and changeful. So it's important to be reflecting, especially because it's that impermanent nature that really shines that light on. Oh, this is really it's not under my control. This is not mine. This can't really be who I am because it's just changed on me. It's just something else. And whether it's say thoughts and moods and views, perspectives, ideas, the conceptualizing faculty of the mind, and the Buddha said that manyati is the conceptualizing capacity of the mind. And it's a calamity. It's a dark. It is suffering. It's a disaster. because it is changing, but then we tend to rely on it and believe in it, and then kind of hold tight to our beliefs and our moods and the various views that we conceive of. So that to be able to look at that impermanence, that changing, that uncertain nature, because it's a doorway into seeing truth, and and it's being really watchful of that aspect of change, because it's the Buddha says that this truth of impermanence is of anicca, impermanence, of inconstancy, of uncertainty, is hidden by the appearance of continuity. There's an appearance of continuity in that, say, like our body feels like it's been like this as a body of who we think we are and what our experience was, and because of continuity, it's arising and ceasing so quickly that we don't notice that change. And say mentally, emotionally, very similar in that, you know, our thoughts seem so solid and real. Our moods and feelings seem so solid and real. But they're bubbles arising and bursting, arising and bursting, arising and bursting. But there's an appearance of continuity that we assume into existence, and it makes for us holding on to that illusion of stability. And of course then we get trapped by that, and we suffer over it. So when it finally sort of hits us that it changes, or it is changing, or has changed, then we get it's kind of like sideswiped by it with what happened there, and but it's always been displaying just the nature of phenomena are always they rely on this change, this arising and ceasing, and it's like one of the insight that is the signature characteristic of entering this stream of Dhamma, is that whatever is of the nature to arise, that is of the nature to cease. And on a certain level you think, well, it's really obvious. But it's when it's really internalized and realized, this is really true. That's what's happening. Whatever is arising is in the process of ceasing. Really, I mean, it's whatever is coming into being is already in that process of ceasing and ending, because that change is there all the time. So that to be able to be able to see that clearly, so that there's a releasing, a relinquishment, a non-grasping, a non-holding. And the Buddha can use some very strong language for contemplating, say, impermanent phenomena, and contemplating both, say, external existence or internal existence in terms of our own mind and our own perception of self. Saying, it's disintegrating. So it says, it's a calamity. It's a dart, like a poison dart. It is painful, and encouraging us to look at that nature, so that we're seeing it in a way that we aren't holding on to it. And there's one can conceive of or get the feeling of, the Buddha's just negating everything, negating all experience. It's like, it's like Ajahn Chah. He says, this, the mind's a liar and a cheat. Whatever you're cranking out there, it's just more lies and more. Because the tendency, of course, is to believe and to be caught up in it, and it's important that we question it, and so that to be able to see the kind of empty, non-graspable nature. This is sort of this empty, shallow, hollow phenomena that are worthy of relinquishing and releasing. It's also important, it's like in the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha, one of the signature qualities of the Buddha's teaching is this the middle. His teaching is both a middle way of practice and a middle way of teaching, so that you relying on a middle way of perceiving and holding our experience, so that looking at, say, the empty and looking at emptiness, or the changeable and uncertain aspects of experience are really important, because our tendency is to grasp and to cling. The Buddha also uses another term that is how do you say, not quite synonymous, but used in conjunction with emptiness, with sunyata, and that is the word tathata, which is like suchness or thusness, or as Ajahn Sumedho oftentimes says, it's like this. So that it's not that we have to negate everything or fend it off. So it's like this, and then okay, how do we hold it? How do we be proud? Well, it's like this. When we experience change, that we can be open to it. It's like this. This is what it feels like. Or we experience happiness and well-being, or we experience peace. And so, it's like this. It's this way. It's on a certain level. It's say this much. It's just this much. So it's a way that we hold it in a different way that gives another texture to our experience of either the world or ourself, where we're not reacting out of fear or aversion or out of desire or out of clinging. It's like this. And so that gives, and oftentimes what we're trying to do is, well, what's the right way? You know, what's the absolute right way? And he said, well, what do you mean? You know, because, well, there's this, you say, well, it's empty, but then it's like this. It's, what is, especially from the Buddha's perspective, what he's doing is giving us tools that allow us to experience freedom from suffering, freedom from those limitations of our conceiving and desiring mind that keeps us dissatisfied, keeps us out of balance. So that learning how to, what works? Because it's just not sort of what's right on an ideal level, or what are we going to apply. It's like, what works? What gives the heart the impetus to see things in their true nature and to release into non-suffering. So whether it's on day-to-day aspects of living, or whether it's within our meditation, within the meditation itself, what do we rely on to help the mind come to a place of clarity and stillness? And sometimes it's a reminding of this is empty. This is there's pending disaster here, or there's a sense of I can just say it's like this and settle into it. So that these are tools to be relied upon, and that's what the Buddha's teaching is, a tool rather than a diktat of ultimate truth. And say these are tools that he's giving us to realize a way of seeing our experience and not being entangled within it. So that to this truth of impermanence, of anicca, of inconstancy, is a very important tool to be learning how to employ, learning how to use, learning how to direct attention to, so that one truly does experience freedom from suffering. So I'll offer that for reflection this afternoon.